Google as an AI-first company. A while ago now, Google announced that it had become an AI-first company. While that may sound like meaningless marketing babble, the truth is that this determination actually has huge potential repercussions for marketers, businesses, and SEO. Firstly, what does Google mean by this? Meet the new, smarter Google. You might think of Google as a search-first company. The first product that Google provided was a search engine, and that is still what most of us associate with the company. Traditionally, Google's search engine did not work much like an AI. Rather, search worked by attempting to match search terms with the content in an article. This is why the advice for SEOs was to insert lots of key phrases into their articles so that Google spiders could read that content and quickly identify that it would be a good match for what the person was searching for. As we all know, this didn't work out perfectly for Google. Lots of unscrupulous marketers abused the system by inserting hundreds of search terms into every article, which in turn meant that content Google would show to the user would be garbled and unreadable. That's why, over time, Google has begun to work more and more like an AI. Now, Google no longer attempts to look for exact keyword matches. Instead, Google tries to answer questions that you ask it. It does this by trying to understand what the user is looking for along with the context, and then to provide relevant answers through its search. RankBrain. Google is able to do this through machine learning. Specifically, it uses a form of natural language processing, which Google refers to as RankBrain. RankBrain is at least partly responsible for helping Google to cope with phrases and words that it hasn't seen before. If RankBrain identifies a word it isn't familiar with, then it can guess what it might mean based on context and based on its usage elsewhere. This helps Google to deal with unusual searches that it hasn't seen before without simply matching search terms to content in articles. Search queries are turned into word vectors called distributed representation. These are words and phrases that are close to each other in meaning and context. RankBrain will then try to map the query into words it understands or clusters of similar words. From there, it insinuates what the searcher actually means and is looking for and provides results on that basis. RankBrain also understands the relationships between words and the way that they work together. At one point, joining words such as the or and were ignored by Google. Now, Google understands the importance of these phrases and the way in which they impact on the intent of the user. Like all the best machine learning algorithms, RankBrain attempts to improve over time and adapt to users. It can see which results get clicked the most and thereby know when it is doing well and when it is getting things wrong. As such, it is able to improve search results for any given keyword quickly through algorithmic testing, which is helping to weed out low-quality content that attempts to game the system. RankBrain works using a Tensor Processing Unit, TPU, which is an AI-specific piece of hardware stored in Google's data centers. This is a specific chip that is better able to handle the specific challenges of machine learning tasks. Google's further plans. Over the past few years, Google may have seemingly diversified. It now makes smartphones, it now makes self-driving cars, and it now makes apps like Google Lens. But at the heart of all these initiatives is some form of AI or machine learning. Google Lens uses machine learning to identify objects in a scene and allow users to that way search the real world around them. Self-driving cars, of course, are highly reliant of various forms of AI. And the Google Pixel phones? Arguably, their main focus is putting Google Assistant in everyone's pockets. And this is the real clue as to what Google is up to. Google Assistant is an AI and virtual assistant that users can use to get weather reports, to book taxis, to play music, and much more. Google Assistant uses a combination of machine learning to detect human language, for example, and AI in order to provide useful results and speak in a natural manner. Google Assistant is closely integrated with Google Search. You can ask Google Assistant a question like, "Who started Iron Man?" and it will give you a natural answer. It does this by first using machine learning to turn your speech into a string, then by using Google Search in order to look up useful answers, which involves machine learning in the form of RankBrain, then by using narrow AI to extract the most useful answers from the best web pages, and then by using another form of narrow AI to provide the response in a natural-sounding manner, which is designed to appear like general AI. Much of this is carried out not on the device that you're speaking to, but on Google's TPU located in the cloud. What does all this mean for marketers? So what does all this mean for marketers? Simple. It means that Google wants to be able to understand your content and extract the most useful information. It no longer wants you to use rigid keywords, and it wants you to prepare for a more voice-driven form of search. Google is betting big on AI and machine learning. It believes that in the future, AI assistants will be huge, and it wants Google Assistant to be number one. It envisages a future where we spend less time staring at our devices and instead get the information we need by asking our phones or our Google Homes. We'll speak naturally to these devices, and they'll provide us with handy answers. Preparing for semantic search. Whether Google Assistant eventually becomes the ubiquitous tool that Google wants it to be or not, the fact remains that Google wants search to become increasingly more natural and human. It already has in many ways. That means that marketers and website owners need to make some changes to the way they do things. It's no longer enough to find a keyword and repeat it a whole lot. You now need to work as though you're speaking with an AI. And that means a couple of things. LSI, Latent Semantic Indexing. Latent semantic indexing is one of the most important things to consider if you're interested in improving your SEO and getting to the top of Google. It's even more critical if you hope to be ready for Google's AI-driven future. Not only is it a powerful concept in itself, but it is also an important microcosm of the broader changes that we are seeing to SEO today. Search engine optimization is a big and very important part of digital marketing, and if you want to drive the maximum number of people to your website or blog, then it's absolutely essential that you have the search engines on board. In the past, SEO has largely relied on creating tons of content around a certain topic and repeatedly using a set number of keywords or key phrases in that content in order to help Google identify the subject and help the right visitors to find your pages. Unfortunately, a few people began to take advantage of this system and began keyword stuffing by using the same keywords over and over again to the point of distraction. Google had to get smarter, and so it did. Today, using the same keyword too much will get you into trouble. So what does Google do instead? It looks at context and the broader subject of the article. In other words, it looks for synonyms and related terms, and this also gives it the ability to better understand what your page is about. For instance, if you had written an article about decision trees, then in the past, Google could theoretically have gotten confused and brought your site up as a result when someone searched for trees. It may have thought you were talking about decisions about trees. Now, though, it can look for related terms like flowchart and thus help to more accurately match article to reader. LSI actually comes from mathematics and uses a technique called singular value decomposition. This means that it will scan unstructured data and look for the relationships between the words and concepts within. How to handle LSI? So, how do you make sure your site is LSI optimized? Short answer, you don't. While it is obviously tempting for SEO companies to now start offering their LSI optimized services, the truth is that you should have been doing this all along and without thinking about it. That's what the best web marketers like Andre Ellison have always recommended, and it's what Matt Cutts advises as well. In short, writing naturally should mean that you are including synonyms and related topics. Otherwise, your writing is going to sound pretty repetitive. The moral is what it's always been: stop double guessing and just write for the reader. This is something we'll come back to again and again with regards to preparing for a smarter Google. But there are also some other tips you can keep in mind if you want to ensure that Google knows what you're talking about. First, make sure that you use more than one search phrase. It's a good idea for a whole host of reasons to use a combination of different search terms rather than targeting just a single one. Seeing as Google will often show results that don't use the exact key phrase the person searched for, it makes sense to try and include a few popular iterations of the same term. Likewise, you should make sure to use good and varied vocabulary around the topic. This helps to better demonstrate the context and the subject matter of your article. Rather than filling an article with random synonyms, think instead about words that would often occur alongside the topic you're working with, such as our earlier example of flowcharts. This is called co-occurrence, and it's the kind of thing that machine learning algorithms love. Structured data. The other big concept that SEOs need to consider in order to be ready for the AI Google of the future is schema markups, also known as structured data, also known as rich data. Remember, Google's aim is to enable Assistant to answer natural language questions with useful responses, which will draw on information found on the web. Google doesn't just want to pull up a list of useful search results. It wants to be able to answer questions. So if someone asks how to make bolognese, it will simply read out the ingredients. In order to do this, Google needs to be able to find that most relevant information in a passage of text and then pull out the specific answer. This takes the concept of RankBrain to the next level, allowing it to understand not just what an article is about, but how each paragraph in that article functions. The problem is that Google's AI can't quite do this yet, at least not well enough to be able to usefully provide answers for people without occasionally including complete nonsense. That's where schema markups come in. The idea of a schema markup is to essentially annotate your articles and blog posts by telling Google what each bit is and what it does. Essentially, you're saying this is a list of ingredients, or this is a user rating. This also helps Google to provide what are known as rich snippets. Rich snippets are search results on the SERP's search engine result pages that include more than just a meta description. You might see a search result listed, for instance, that also includes bullet point steps, or that includes ingredients for the meal. This way, the user can see the information they're looking for without even needing to leave that website. How to use markups. Markups look a lot like HTML. Here's an example of what this might look like. That is basically telling Google that you are talking about a local business, the Candle Factory. You can also use schema to highlight product names, authors, aggregate ratings, software applications, restaurants, movies, and much more. To use this information, you can either look up the HTML code and implement it yourself, or you can use Google's handy markup helper, https://www.google.com/markup-helper/u/0. Here you will simply share the URL of the page you want to mark up, and it will then provide you with the opportunity to create the necessary tags. There are also plugins you can use to the same end through WordPress. The good and the bad of schema markups. The savvy among you may have noticed some worrying issues with schema markups. Specifically, they encourage people not to visit your website. Let's say you have a recipes website and you included an article on cooking bolognese. You probably did this hoping that people would search for it on Google, find your website, and then visit your page in order to read about it. In doing so, they might also click on a few ads, they might buy an affiliate product, or they might just remember your brand so they come back again in the future. But if Google simply takes your key information and shares it, then there is no real incentive for them to actually visit your web page. As such, there's no chance that they will click on your ads or buy your products. They'll not even know that the information came from your website. Essentially, Google is this way using our intellectual property without any remuneration, which has upset a lot of webmasters, businesses, and marketers. So should you avoid using these features altogether? Unfortunately, that is not really an option. Remember, Google also uses markups in order to provide rich snippets. These are the more media-rich search listings, which include things like star ratings, images, bullet points, and more. These really help a web page to stand out in the SRPs and thereby ensure that more people click on that listing. And while you might not get any benefit from having Google read your ingredients out, if you don't include markup language, then it will just get that same information from one of your competitors. Google wants to use schema markups, and that means that it will likely reward those sites that do with a little SEO boost. For all those reasons, it's essential that you keep using this strategy, even though you might be giving Google free information in doing so. In the future, if more and more people talk to their Google Assistant rather than browsing the web for information, then there's a good chance Google might need to rethink its policy, lest it face a rather big backlash from content creators. Developing your AI skills using SQL. If you want to ensure you aren't left behind by developments in AI and machine learning, then it may pay to learn relevant skills that you can use to implement your own strategies. At least by understanding the tools used in AI and machine learning, you will be able to navigate these new horizons and make smarter decisions for your business. One of the key concepts to understand then is SQL. SQL stands for Structured Query Language and is a declarative language that is used to store and retrieve information from a database. If that sounds like gobbledygook, it basically provides a set of commands you can use to manipulate large data sets. SQL is crucial for data science and machine learning. It takes a number of forms, such as MySQL, SQL Server, and SQLite. Each uses a slightly different dialect to achieve the same thing: interact with relational databases. Relational databases consist of numerous tables like you see in Excel, with columns and rows. So if you had a lot of visitors to your website, you might fill out their data across rows such as name, age, contact details, etc. Pull out any given visitor, and it will bring their details up so that you're ready to call them and market to them. SQL then allows you to do things like creating whole new tables or inserting new rows, columns, or cells. You can do this with simple commands like create table and insert into. To make a new database, you first need to use a command to make it, and from there, you can then begin inserting tables like so. One of the most powerful commands is something called select, which allows you to retrieve information across one or more tables. For instance, you can use this to get the details of anyone over a certain age, like so. Group by is a command that lets you group results according to certain conditions. Cursors let us move through sets of data and make changes. While this all might seem quite simple, combined with huge amounts of data, these simple commands can yield fascinating results and be extremely useful in informing future decisions. This is essential how machine learning works. And if you ever want to work as a data scientist to employ big data solutions or machine learning applications, this is what you will need to know. Chatbots. Chatbots are an increasingly popular tool for marketers, business owners, and webmasters. So what is a chatbot? Essentially, a chatbot is a minuscule AI that will normally live on a website and which then be able to answer questions and engage in basic conversation. Very often, chatbots are used in customer service. This way, a website can answer commonly asked questions and significantly lighten the load on its customer service team. The company can provide the support it wants to for its buyers without spending a huge amount on extra members of staff and call centers. But a chatbot can be much more than just customer support. Chatbots are just as effective in marketing and can be extremely effective at increasing sales and profits. Chatbots are particularly effective at kickstarting a sales process by welcoming visitors to a website and asking them what they're looking for. Instead of relying on UX to try and guide the visitor to the right part of the page, a chatbot can instead simply ask what they are hoping to buy and then take them to that page. What's more is that it can provide useful recommendations, perhaps informed by previous buying history, and it can reduce any concerns that users might have. Chatbots can even get information from customers by asking them their budget or what it is they're looking for. Even if they don't buy, you now understand their intent, and you can use this information to hone your marketing strategy further. Some pundits argue that in the next few years, 85% of business might be done through chatbots. So how can you get started? 80% of businesses say they want chatbots in place by 2020. Facebook chatbots. One option is to invest in a Facebook chatbot. There are plenty of sites and services online that will sell these for you. Facebook Messenger is a new frontier for a lot of small businesses. While it has crept under the radar for many marketers, the numbers speak for themselves. Facebook Messenger is currently used by over 1.2 billion people. That's 11% of the entire human population. And what makes Messenger even more powerful is that it can be embedded into your website. Over 20 million pages use messaging, and that number is growing. This provides a very simple and easy way to communicate with your visitors, to answer their queries, and to help convert traffic into sales. But you can't be available 24/7 to cater to all your visitors' needs, and this is where a chatbot comes in. This is a basic AI that can tend to your customers and help to provide a more personal experience while answering basic questions. This is a hugely powerful tool for businesses, as it means you'll no longer lose visitors that struggle to find their way around the website or to get the information they need. Imagine if customers could order food by just sending a Facebook message and then answering a few automated questions. Or what if a business could access your expert legal advice without ever needing to speak to you in person? All of this is possible in the near future. Facebook chatbots can even be proactive by sending messages to potential customers. You need to be extremely careful with this, seeing as it can be seen as spam. But if you have an automated system that's able to reach out to potential buyers at just the right time with a carefully crafted message, this can be huge for business. Other types of chatbot. Of course, not all chatbots are Facebook chatbots. There are many other ways to implement chatbots into a website, from creating them from scratch using homemade software, to using them to respond to emails or SMS. Computer vision. As mentioned, computer vision is the ability for machines and computers to see by learning from huge data sets and machine learning. By observing countless images, a machine can learn to identify images in an object or to navigate an environment without crashing into things. What does this mean for the future of SEO? One big thing, and one thing that you should make sure that you are ready for, is that Google will likely start paying more attention to images on websites. Traditionally, we've been told to avoid using images for things like site names. Why? Because Google can't read an image, and therefore we won't get any SEO benefit from that. But Google does have software that can read text from an image. This is called OCR, Optical Character Recognition. And if you want to see just how good it is, try pointing Google Translate at a foreign language and see it appear in your native tongue in real time. If Google can do this, then it's only a matter of time before it starts reading the text in your images to see if they back up the niche and key phrase that you are targeting with your website. Likewise, seeing as facial recognition is already a big deal when it comes to security and Facebook, it is probably only a matter of time before Google starts using that too. For example, if you write a blog post about Sylvester Stallone, Google might someday look not only at your content, but also at the photos on your page in order to see if there are pictures of Stallone there. Google Images might one day not be reliant on surrounding text at all, but might instead base its results purely on what it sees in the image and whether this lines up with what you're searching for. Issues like image quality are also likely to play a big role in the future. Google might opt not to recommend your web page if it thinks the imagery on there is poorly chosen and out of place. So what can you do to prepare? For now, the closest thing to communicating with Google via images is the use of markup language and/or file names and alt tags. Using alt tags to describe images can help Google to know what they represent and therefore to better decide if your site is relevant for a particular user. Meanwhile, make sure that all the imagery you are using is relevant and high quality. How to future-proof your marketing. Over the course of this training, we've examined a large number of different types of AI and machine learning in the context of digital marketing. The objective of all this has been to help you better prepare for the future. You know that you should start collecting as much data as possible right now, that you need to add schema markups to your site, that you should be using LSI, that you could benefit from a chatbot. You even know a little bit about SQL, just in case you ever decide to get involved behind the scenes. But in all likelihood, all of this is going to change a lot more before it enters the scene, and we can't really anticipate just how its impact will be felt. There are huge waves making their way through internet marketing, and the power of AI can't really be understated. Imagine, for instance, what will happen once AI that can write high-quality content becomes commonplace and commercially available. This technology already exists. AI that can write nearly as well as a human. But when it is allowed to cut loose on the web, it could potentially flood the internet with new enough content to double or triple its size in a matter of days. How will we know what's written by a human and what's not? What about when AI can create realistic-looking images? We've already seen the power of deep fakes. How will we know what's real and what's not? We can't really prepare for these scenarios because we don't know how they will play out. So for now, it is best to focus on what we do know. And in particular, as a marketer, that means focusing on Google's move to natural language processing and more human-like interactions. It also means that Google is going to keep getting smarter. Google used to look for keyword matches, but now it actually understands the meaning of a website and can use many more metrics in order to understand whether it is high or low quality and whether it is delivering on what it claims to do. In fact, Google likely has the potential to become the most powerful AI on the planet, owing to the huge amount of information it has access to and the huge resources that the company pour into it. This makes it increasingly difficult to game the system or to try and trick Google. The best thing we can do then? Make the best quality content we can. As Google becomes more and more human, writing for Google and writing for the reader will mean essentially the same thing. It's time we started focusing on great quality content and on providing real value. The key thing to remember is that Google serves its customers first and foremost. Who are its customers? The users who use it to find information and entertainment. Google wants people to keep using its search, and as such, it needs to make sure it consistently brings up only the most relevant and interesting information. As long as you are concerned with creating great quality content for your readers, then your goals and Google's will be aligned. Thus, each time it gets a little bit smarter, that will work to your favor instead of being something you need to worry about. As Google gets smarter, it will find more ways of identifying the best quality content. And so, if you're focused on delivering that, Google will find more ways of connecting you with your audience. Combine this with more data collection and a generally more data-driven approach to marketing, and you'll be ready for the future of the industry.